Yeah.
Just shuffling her back. It's just getting weird. Behave, please.
I'll put glasses on again, so at least we can differentiate a little bit here. Actually,
I
if I really want to make this weird, this
what?
is gonna be. Oh, you'll see. You'll
I don't
see.
even want to know. Leave it. I love it this way.
Yes.
This is
You
so.
know what?
Yes.
This is so weird.
Yes.
You need to leave it.
This is really wrong.
I'm going to
Really get it framed nicely.
I'm like
right
having
there,
about this.
right there. Do you like how it's like nearly mirrored now?
Okay, I don't think we can do the actual video this way, but this is going to make for a hell of an intro. Welcome to the Casual Fanatics. We are the Casual Fanatics, and we are the people who tackle the pop culture questions that you don't dare do because we dare do. I am Paul Stadden, that is Jeremy Brazel, and that is Sydnee Johnson. And this week, we're not really tackling a question. We're tackling stuff that just bothers the crap out of us. We all watch movies and TV shows and read comics and books, and we see stuff that those characters who are supposed to really be knowledgeable about something just aren't. Or there's a fact about something that's gotten wrong, or there's a wrong sound to something, or they're referencing something that's incorrect. All this stuff that bothers us as people who are knowledgeable, and now we're going to complain about it for however long we feel like complaining about it. So, guys, okay, just real quick, what's the number one thing when you're watching a movie that really bugs you when they get it wrong?
Real estate.
Okay, fair. All right, fair.
Everything to do with real estate.
So, like, you're talking about just like the process by which people purchase things, selling things.
The process, the profession, like what it looks like, houses that we talked about this a little bit the other day. Houses that people live in not matching up with like their lifestyle / careers.
Yes, like the guy works at McDonald's and he has an apartment
loft. Like a $400,000 house. Like
yes. Every show that takes place in New York, every single one. Seinfeld, like Kramer doesn't have a job and he's got this amazing apartment.
At least in Friends,
Have you ever noticed like houses in these things? It's either this immaculate 3-story mansion thing, or it's a one-room hovel that is like has roaches crawling throughout.
Oh yeah.
You don't have a normal house.
There are no normal houses on television.
It's like not even the ones where they're buying houses. It's like I'm a janitor and I paint worms on canvas for some reason, and my budget for a house is my budget for a house is $3 million. It's like
you're getting into house hunters territory. Are we allowed to talk about reality TV tonight?
Oh gosh.
Oh,
that's absolutely. I watch it. Ever since I got married, I watched a lot.
I will go on a bender.
Oh please! Ever since I got married, I've watched a lot more HGTV than I have ever watched before. And these house hunters shows with like these young married couples, like Bill wants to be really close to the city for work. Marie wants to be really close to the ocean. Their budget is $300. Can they afford something that maybe is $3 million a year?
See, the better ones to me are always like, you know, she sells stuff on Etsy and he has like this office job. They're moving to London where like the cost of living is exorbitantly high. And like, they've got to get this place with a garden and, you know, room for their dog and 2 children. And they need like a 3-bedroom flat, you know, like I'm like.
And they've been living with their parents the whole time, haven't been saving any money. You know, it's going to have to be all purely based on salary.
You've been living with your parents. You've probably been saving money, like to be real.
Well, I'm just saying that this is like a real scenario I saw. So.
Is it safe to say that these house hunter shows the reason for the housing crisis?
I wouldn't say entirely. Okay, so look, I will say this as a real estate agent that like who does this full time. I hate HGTV. I enjoy watching it as like background buzz because I genuinely do like design and I genuinely used to like houses before I did this. I say somewhat jokingly. But no, like it literally is the bane of my existence because it gives people such a false impression. It's kind of like WebMD is for doctors, HGTV is to me. It plants a lot of incorrect ideas that I then have to go back and like overwrite with like, no, this is what the process of buying a home actually looks like, and it's actually not that fun, and I'm sorry. And it just gets worse from here. Here's your textbook of paper that I have to explain to you. And it makes people think that like it's like buying a house is a fun decorating project, and buying a house is like a harrowing legal experience.
It's the biggest purchase you're gonna make.
Purchase. It's super emotional. There's a lot of thought that needs to go into it. There's a lot of details to cover. Like you are going to have to compromise. It's not going to be perfect. There is no epic dream home in your look, whatever your budget is. I don't care if your budget's like $3 million. Your epic dream home probably don't exist. You probably gonna walk into that $3 million house and be like, but that $4 million one is so much prettier.
Yeah,
it's how we are.
Everybody. It doesn't matter. Like that's everyone. I don't care what your budget is. So
the grass is always greener. Yeah,
that's just the process. That's just the emotions that go along with it, and it's given people a really fake idea of what real estate looks like. And the fact that like this is not a fun weekend. It's a 45-day process for most people, if you're lucky.
Right.
House hunting.
Frustrating.
House Hunters shows it as like, and I like House Hunters International because I like seeing the process of expatting. It's fun to me.
Yes, it's fun to watch.
That's the most interesting thing to me. But the thing is, like, they make it out like it's a fun weekend. I have clients I've been showing houses for 3 years.
Yeah.
Like, that's not everybody, but like, it does happen. So this is not a weekend.
This brings up the larger problem of reality TV. And this just comes from my love of what actually goes into making reality TV shows, because it's not real at all. A lot of these house hunter shows, the houses have been picked like well in advance.
Pre-picked.
Totally pre-picked. And a lot of times are the other houses they're walking into are like friends' houses. And they have to then crap on those houses because they're not the ones they picked. Like, yeah, well, the layout's really weird, and I think that the furniture was strange. We're gonna have to repaint the walls. And the friends are off camera like, what the crap? And you know, it's just the whole reality TV thing of that none of it's real.
So, but once again, with design and reality TV being a problem, like I have people come in and be like, well, I don't like the wall color. And like, okay, this is not my opinion. This is firmly scientific. There are two kinds of people in this realm. There are people that like can walk into a space and see potential without having it laid out in front of them. And they like, oh yes, I can see with my furniture in it and my wall color that I want. And they envision it. There are other people, if you don't put it in front of their face or like a really neutral version of it where they can imagine like what their bed is going to look like in there, if you don't help them out, they can't see it. And so like I've had people come in and be like, well, I don't like the wall color. I'm like, well, paint is about $20. So.
Yeah, that is very true. Because like my mom, she knows, she walks into a space and she visualizes everything. Immediately. How it's going to work. Every little detail. But
and I'm that person, so it's really hard for me to imagine the other person.
Yeah. There's some people I know who just can't visualize anything. It's like there's literally in their brain that it's like they can't read books because they can't realize what's going on.
It's a strange spatial geometry. Like it's a part of your brain that just it works differently. It's nothing against any of these people. It's just like you can't imagine like, oh, what my bed will look like in this room because like your brain won't do that, and that's fine. And that's why stagers exist. But you know, like the thing is, people come in and they see people complain about things like paint color or like things that are easily changeable. You know, don't go buy pink granite, guys. Don't do it. If you're, I know you're dudes, but like if you're likes pink granite and says let's put this in, don't do it. It's a bad idea. There's a reason there's not like I found this tile one time. I'm in love. It's marble and mirror tile they're skull and crossbones. There's a reason that's not in my bathroom.
All right.
Resale
amazing.
value.
Right. Yeah, and I guess if
But
you have enough money, you just throw money at something and you don't care, then, you
you're
know.
gonna
Yeah.
live there for a really long time.
Right. That's the kind of
It's
stuff
a-
you find in those house hunters shows. They're like, why didn't you pick that house? Like, well, it was the skull and crossbones in the tile. It kind of did it for me.
But to be fair, like you got to get a chisel to get that out. It's not a $20 gallon of paint.
Yeah, that's hard to cover over, you know.
It is
Yeah,
interesting the choices some people make with houses. It's like
That's
this
bad.
painting, like you say, people paint granite.
yeah.
Is that
Oh.
what you said?
The worst is carpeting in bathrooms and kitchens.
You've seen
I
that?
see. Oh yeah.
I've
Oh
been in
yes.
houses.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
I've been.
this was an era thing, though. This
Yeah.
was a specific era in time that carpeting in bathrooms was like really luxurious. And if you've ever look, I have been in a house. Oh my god, I won't say where it is. But the bathtub was like, it was a regular sized bathtub, like you see in most bathrooms.
Yep.
Had like stairs coming down from it, carpeted, shag carpet.
No.
I have to ask, did the people from those eras get sick from mold?
Not usually. Actually, people were just really like, unless you're like splashing water out of the bathtub,
Right.
kind of dry.
The bigger problem is in the kitchen, though, where the smells just
It's gross.
seep in.
And look, I gotta tell you, I don't care. Like, I don't know if you guys have carpet in your homes, but if you've ever ripped up carpet before, and you're not aware of what lives in your carpet, I don't care how clean it looks. My carpet looked clean when I moved into this place. I took that carpet up myself.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever take up your own carpet, you will never want carpet again.
Yeah, I'll stick with area rugs. Thank you.
You roll them up and burn them when you're
I've taken out carpet at least 4 or 5 different occasions.
Oh, it's terrible and it's exhausting. But back to things TV gets wrong.
Yeah, back to things TV gets wrong. So yeah, real estate, and because of course that's the thing you know really well is real estate. So when you see these things on TV, and you know, I think then it highlights then when a show gets something really accurate about this kind of. Have you ever seen something on a show where you're like, yes, that's it, that nails the realtor experience?
Okay, so I give reality a break. Honestly, the only actual reality TV real estate wise I watch is $1 Million Listing, New York, not LA. I do enjoy it. I recognize it is heavily edited. You know, but I'm aware of that and I go into it knowing that. And I also go into it knowing, like, I think I look at it from a little bit different perspective than lay people do. And they actually do a fairly decent job with the show, in my opinion. But like in general, in like pop culture shows that involve real estate, and there are many that I love dearly. Honestly, no. I don't think I've ever seen it gotten exceptionally right. For some reason, we're a horror trope, and that is accurate. That's probably the most accurate thing they get about real estate.
Oh yeah, actually.
Rick's job some days.
Having worked in the news and have had to report on some horrifying realtor involved things, yeah,
it's terrifying. So like that I'll say is like the most accurate thing about real estate in
yeah.
entertainment is like the literal like serial killer stories are probably the most accurate. Like
Right. Yeah.
But like I love Santa Clarita Diet, like before it got canceled. Like the whole reason I watched it was Jeremy were talking about this the other night, Jeremy and me. There's a series of like shows and movies that I thought were going to be really stupid before I watched them. And then somebody convinced me to watch them and I'm like, oh my God, I was wrong. This is really smart. And that was one of those shows that I thought was going to be really dumb. And so finally the way a friend of mine got me to watch it, he's like, no, you have to watch it. They're real estate agents.
Oh.
And that was what got me. So I'm like, okay. I gotta see the show. I gotta see the show where she's a zombie and they're real estate agents. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I need to
And
give that a shot now.
the way that they present real estate, even in the show, and I appreciate it. It's really funny. But the level of stuff that is just blatantly incorrect.
Yeah. I think that's true
No.
of professions. Like when you're watching something that's your profession, it just hurts. Anytime I would watch something involving radio in a TV or movie, and like they show that the radio people are like have money, I just thought that was always so cute.
I mean, that's the thing in my industry too. Like everyone thinks we're
Yeah.
rich.
Oh, you know all those people
We
in
go
like.
months without paychecks sometimes.
I will say this
Speaking-
though. One thing they got right in a lot of stuff that's based like especially in news radio is everybody's a weirdo. Absolutely, every radio station you go into, and Jeremy, you can confirm this too. You worked at the same radio station I did.
I've
I
been
did,
to
I
a
did.
party. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's accurate.
everybody's a character.
Yeah. I'm curious though. Like, I wonder what you would think. Since you have a lot more experience than me in that regard. There's a movie. It's called Pontypool. It's a Canadian horror movie about the zombie apocalypse.
Right.
But it all takes place inside of a radio station. And what it is, instead of seeing the actual zombies attacking and things like that, you're getting people like calling in, telling their stories about what's going on. And it creates, it's a fantastic film, but I would love to see your thoughts on that movie.
I'd actually be really interesting. It'd be interesting to see that because the biggest thing that they get wrong about radio in TV and movies, it's not the fact that like that people make a lot of money or anything like that. It's that the stations are always huge, and like I got spoiled. The radio station I worked at was in an actual building with like reasonable sized rooms that people could be in, which is not the case. Most radio stations you go into, like it's like a closet. Like literally, the first location that News Radio 1620 worked out of, which back when it was AM 1620 classic country, was literally like the recording booth was a closet, and then there was like the one main room, and that was it. In fact, little inside radio, Cat Country still operates out of its tower out in the middle of the woods. Which people have to drive out on, which directions to involve turn off the paved part, and don't go straight because you'll go to the hunting lodge and they will shoot at you if you keep going. That's not an exaggeration, by the way. And they've seen when they get to the tower, like pumas and stuff out there, snakes and coyotes.
I believe it.
So middle of nowhere. That's the radio experience. It's not like, and it's not like people recognizing you.
Yeah.
I have been recognized 3 times in my life, and only one of them was flattering. The other 2 were not. Actually, one was terrifying because I was getting onto a plane and I was going through the security check. The guy takes my boarding pass and my ID, and this is like 6 a.m, and I'm like just fried. I just hate having to be up that early. And I'm starting to put my stuff into the little bin to go through the conveyor belt, and he comes over. Never a good sign.
Oh,
ever
no,
in
no.
your life. The TSA guy's like,
I'm
I'm going to leave my post and come over to you. And he's like, are you the Paul from the morning show? And I'm like, yeah, I am. And I'm going back through my mind about all the stuff I've said about TSA over the years, how they're hacks and terrible, and just like praying he never listens to any of that. The other time was I gave my ID. Having to pick up some photos that were being developed at a Walgreens. I give my ID to the guy, and he says, does your dad work in radio? No. He's like, oh, because you have the same name as this guy on the radio. I'm like, that's me. How old do I sound?
Young. Not old ball.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Okay. That one hurt a little bit. That one, I don't know.
I can see how that happened though.
Yeah. But it's not like, I mean, unless you're like super high level in radio, people don't know who you are. And, most people don't care. It's not a glamorous job. It's fun. you get to do a lot of weird stuff.
So-
But you know,
So can I touch on that for a second? Like,
yeah,
'cause
yeah,
I have the same problem. Like, and beyond just like the blatant, like contractually illegal stuff that is shown in like popular television series
yeah,
that real estate agents do. And me and a friend, honestly, like we have like seriously thought about sitting around and doing a reaction video to Santa Clarita Die and just being like, that's completely illegal.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
we're in California, but in Florida, no. Like,
Right, right.
but the other thing is that like, because every state is different. But like I'm licensed in Florida and Alabama. And so like talking about like the experience of doing this job, okay, like once again, the public, like general humans and people who decide to become real estate agents end up seeing like HGTV or like some movie. And you know, usually not the horror movies. That's not usually the draw. But like, and then get into the real estate or talk to you. Like as soon as you say, oh, I work in real estate, the first thing you'll get at any networking event or party or group of gathering of people is, oh, I've thought about getting into real estate.
That's a very similar thing with writing. It's
have,
like, oh, I've always wanted to write a book. It's like, do you know how hard it is and how unrewarding the financial part is?
myself in the brain. But the thing is, like, I have a very non-sugar-coated speech that I give to these people, not because I don't want people to be real estate agents if that's what they want to do. The problem is that the version that you see of it on TV is so glamorous and so like driving around I drive a Jeep Grand Cherokee, guys. Like I'm not afraid to say that, like my name's on the back of my car. It's not a secret.
Right.
Like, but like I drive a Jeep. I don't drive around in a BMW. I don't make billions of dollars every day. It's not how that works. It's very hard in the beginning. Look, I'm like, these are not exaggeration stories. I was in BFE, Alabama today in the heat for 3 hours at a home inspection. And the home inspector is like, hey, let me show you this snake I found 3 properties over the other day. This rattlesnake, like I'm just going to say, is the biggest rattlesnake I have ever seen in my life. And I have been in some areas that have some snakes.
I don't want to see that.
Bigger than this man. And he's like, yeah, it was 3 lots down. I'm like, great.
I don't want that.
We're just in the yard. Like, but like, and that aside, like I've walked into houses that literally like I've walked in and it's raining inside because part of the roof is missing.
Yeah,
And
right.
sometimes it also wasn't raining outside, which was confusing.
Ooh.
I've walked into houses where there is no floor. Like literally, I've signed waivers to go into places. I've walked in, gotten 2 steps in, and realized like the floor has disintegrated, and it's a 3-foot drop to the subfloor, from the subfloor to the ground. And it's like, yeah, we told you enter with caution, and you're like on support beams, hoping they're not rotted. My best friend got. She's got Kelly Shamer hears this. She went to open a door to a house one time, and we had another agent friend who just got into the business, and she literally explained to our mutual friend that like, yeah, I was opening a door and the awning over the door gave way on top of her and like moldy water dropped on her and she was soaking wet in front of her client.
Ooh.
I carry a respirator in my car because I have a mold sensitivity and I've been in a lot of houses that are full of mold. It's Florida.
Yeah.
And like, these are the breaks, guys. They're not all like $500,000 plus houses.
Yeah.
And I hate to like break it to people. Look, I have like a disclaimer when I go like on showings sometimes. Usually if I've checked them out first and I know it's not going to be like real smooth, I'm like, you need to wear closed-toed shoes. Yeah. I'm wearing closed-toed shoes. Heels are a joke in real estate. No one wears heels.
Every movie, every TV show, they're always in heels.
I wore heels my first week in real estate. Then I got called out to the beach.
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't wear heels anymore. I don't wear skirts anymore. You know why? We live in Florida. Like,
yeah.
So all these things, like all these ideas that you have, but like I'm going to dress cute and I'm going to wear heels and I'm going to show pretty houses and I love looking at houses.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. If you like looking at houses, go get an interior design degree.
Yeah.
I'm doing you a favor. Like, because what it is in reality is a lot of like what I just described, a lot of driving, if you're like me and you show houses in the middle of nowhere, because I'll drive anywhere for my clients. I just don't care. A lot of like legal paperwork in the middle of the night, because that's when you do it, because you had appointments all day, if you're lucky. And then some days of waking up and being like, am I unemployed today?
Yeah.
Because the
Yeah.
last 2 weeks I haven't slept, but I don't have any appointments today.
Technically, between every time you're
Now I
done
gotta
selling
wait
something.
30 days for my check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. It's funny you mentioned the kind of giving a spiel to someone who thinks about doing the thing. Is I had a thing I would say to, because we got interns at the radio station a lot, and they would
They're
come
so
in.
sorry-eyed.
I know, and they're like, all jazzed about getting into radio, and I said, look, there are a couple things you're going to need to know. Number one, unless your last name ends in Imbaugh, you're not going to be a millionaire doing this. If you want to own a radio station, well, you should have taken business courses, and that would make you some money. If you want to work a job where you're working 70 hours a week, you probably don't get a lot of recognition. And if you do, it means they're giving you more work because you're good at it. And if you suck at it,
Want to pay you more though.
no, they're going to pay. Like, no, but and here's the thing: if you suck at it, you're gone, because there are 50 other people who want your position. Because for some reason, radio people really want to frickin' work in radio, and if you just never say no, you're going to be up at 3 a.m. doing a morning show. You better be a morning person, or learn to be a morning person. Coffee will be your friend. Wonder why drug use is so rampant in radio. It's so weird. Anyway, you're going to have to
be a cocaine problem.
Yeah, I can tell you some stories. So
She's all right.
I was joking.
I'm not joking. So then you're going to have to learn. You're going to have to learn to do everything. Every single job in the radio station, you're going to have to know how it all works, because there's going to be emergencies all the time. That's the thing about radio. It exists because you are the person that's the voice of reason in an emergency. Is there a hurricane coming? You're at work. That is your work. And I've slept all night.
Not just. I was going to say, not just a hurricane coming. Is a hurricane here?
Hurricane coming, here, and is now gone. That whole span of time, you're working. Is there a parade this weekend? You're walking in it. Oh, you're not done with your commercials? You got to finish them. I heard a story about a guy. There is a level of lazy that I aspire to. My operations manager told me about a guy who did all his production on the air. A commercial break would be coming up. His finger would be holding the reel to the tape. As soon as the break would start, he'd let it go. It'd be recording. He'd do his voiceover over the music that was playing. And then once that spot was done, it was recorded. He did it on air, live, every time. And he'd get done with one commercial, and then another piece of music would start playing, and he'd do voiceover for that one. That is the skill it takes to be that lazy is amazing.
Real hard.
So that's what radio is. It's not you go in, you do your show, you go and live your life. It's you do your show, and then you're doing prep for the next day's show, and then you're doing all your commercials, and you're writing all your live reads. Then you're probably a salesperson too, so you're going out to meet with potential clients who aren't going to advertise with you, except for that 5% of people, because that's how it works in sales. Every salesperson knows this. You know. So it's a lot of slammed doors and cold leads. And I mean, I was there every day for just like 12 hours because I had production to do, and I was the program director and the producer for the morning show. So I was helping book guests for the next day's show and write copy and stuff. So, but here's the thing. Here's the thing about radio. The thing that they don't really show you, which is actually the cool part, it's that you get to do stuff that other people don't get to do. There's a little bit of that. Like they may show somebody backstage who's like part of a radio station or something like that. But I got to fly on Fat Albert during one of the air shows.
You've gotten some really cool opportunities, because like I remember when you were in radio, and like yes, you get some cool opportunities, but I'm gonna be real, you were strung out and exhausted a lot of the time.
I was.
And like, look, go ahead.
You also get people's phone numbers. You probably shouldn't have their phone numbers.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, he did.
Yes, I did.
He did.
I woke up Bill Engvall. I will never be not happy that I woke him up because he didn't understand how time zones worked.
That's amazing.
My God.
Hello, who's this? This is the producer for the radio show you agreed to come on. Click. Beep. Like, all right, guess we're not getting Bill on.
It's a great story.
That's great.
But I say all this, and I say this. I love my job. I really do. I adore real estate. There's a reason I'm not doing anything else. Because there's nothing quite like it.
Right.
But the thing is, and I don't have a problem with it being the way it is, but I think people come in unprepared, and that's my problem with it. People get into it for all of the wrong. Same thing with radio. They get into all the wrong reasons.
That's the same. Yeah, media does just have this tendency of romanticizing certain industries. It's like my passion is writing. I want to be able to live off of my writing someday.
Right.
And like, I do it because I love writing. It's not because I have any far-fetched fantasy that I'm going to be rich someday. It's becoming rarer and rarer and rarer for a person to become even stable off of writing. It's a arduous thing to put hundreds of hours into a book, and then you have to send it off to an agent. The agent has to approve it. Then you put dozens of more hours into that book. Then the agent finally finds, after 6 months, a year, whatever, a publisher that will publish the book. Then you have to go through, the legal part where you sign your contract, things like that. And, for all these hundreds of hours that you put in, you're lucky to get a couple $1,000 for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So as you very rarely get paid out. Like you reach where you maximize, like, oh, they've made the money back, so you start getting royalties. It's like, you know how many authors get royalties? Very few. But you see, like in Secret Window, you have the person, the tortured author who's been famous for years, writing his books and things like that. It's like, it's a romanticized thing where, you think all these people who are authors are just like making it big. And it's like, they're these artistic tortured souls and things like that. It's like, no, it's like, if you're going to be a successful author, you have to be a successful salesman and businessman. There's no way. It's like marketing is like 80% of what you need to be able to do if you're going to be a successful writer.
True of so many things. Well, I think about if you've ever seen the movie Throw Mama from the Train, this is probably the best example of what I'm going to talk about with writing. In that movie, Billy Crystal is a writer, and he's writing this book called Throw Mama from the Train. And he gets done writing the book, and the movie makes it seem like, well, that's it. He's done writing his book. He got done typing I finished the last paragraph. I'm like, cool. So you're about to send that off to an editor, and he's going to change everything. That's what's happening next. Because
no.
Agent, and then
he hasn't even written his second draft yet.
Right. That was it's like, well, you just got done typing it on a typewriter, so like, it's perfect. Like, just like you're like Mozart, where you just get to spew it out, and like, here's your book now. Boom, done, finito. Like, that's not remotely, like, I write blog articles and commercials, and I have like 5 revisions that I have to do for everything. Like, for a 30-second ad.
And the thing is, like, I mean, at least today, like, there are some options for self-publishing and things like that, which make it a little bit easier. But it's still not.
It's easier to get published, harder to make money, because.
Exactly.
Well, depends. It's like, if you know how to market yourself and you are able to build a platform for yourself, self-publishing can be a very, very lucrative route.
You're really taking the DIY route at that point. You better be able to do all of it.
Yeah.
Every bit of it, exactly.
This reminds me of kind of the dynamic in talking about like the person who's the business person who can put forward the image and really market something and figure out make
Yeah,
money off
you
something,
like,
and then the pure artist. Um, we all know the name Felix the Cat, the cartoon character Felix the Cat. Well, for a lot of
Mhm.
years, people thought that Pat Sullivan was the guy who created Felix the Cat because his name is on all the credits. He's the producer. Well, no, he had nothing to do with it. Otto Mesmer was the guy who created Felix the Cat, and he's the one who animated all the cartoons. He didn't want to have to deal with the business stuff. He let Pat
Mhm.
handle all of that and take all the credit because all he wanted to do was make Felix the Cat cartoons.
yeah,
And of course, financially, he was kind of screwed because Pat Sullivan kept all the profits. But at least Otto got to make the stuff that he loved to do, and that's kind of been the dynamic a lot of times. Black Sabbath had this problem in the 1970s where they weren't really making money off of the album sales. They had stuff, like they had the cool cars and the big houses, but the record company owned that stuff. So as soon as like somebody got
Mhm.
fired from the band, like Ozzy, he didn't have the cool cars, the house anymore because that belonged to the record company. You see how the artist gets screwed and why knowing, like Jeremy said, that having your marketing and your business savvy is kind of important. That because this
Mhm.
whole and that's a okay. We're gonna
mhm.
get to a lot of topics tonight. I know because we've already just
Our brains are just.
there's so much stuff in this movie. Anyway, but Jeremy, on the writing tack, I don't want
Uh-huh.
to stop you here because there is a lot that's wrong. Okay, there was a good old joke about writing that I heard years ago. It was this guy is being taken on a tour of hell for writers, and he sees all these writers. And there's fire and brimstone everywhere. Every writer is sitting on a smoldering rock that's just burning their flesh. The typewriter has razor blades on the keys, and it's just horrible. And then the guy gets taken up to heaven, to writer's heaven, and it's the same thing. It's still all on fire. They're sitting on the burning rock, and the typewriters have razor blades. And he's like, "What's the deal?" Well, these writers are published, and that's it. That's writing.
It's-
That's brilliant.
well, it's well, it's not even fully that. It's just like there is something about the arduous process of getting through creating that beast
Yeah.
that you're trying to create. That's the ultimate reward, is finally saying it's done.
Yes.
This is a complete package. Like you'll never be fully satisfied with it. It's just something about that whole process that just gets you amped.
Yeah.
So even though you're typing on those razor blades and everything feels like, well, sometimes you get into a flow state, and there's nothing like just where every sentence putting on the page. Then there's what I find so interesting about writing is the fact that writers so inaccurately portray writing.
Yeah, I was just thinking this exact same thing. All this inaccurate stuff in movies and TV shows, they were all written by writers. Why is it so wrong?
This was because they have to romance. It's like they
Yeah.
know writers, they know themselves, usually, but so they write what they know. Is
Yeah.
why you see so many writer main characters, and then they just romanticize it. They know what they're writing is inaccurate about the writing world, but they want they want to romanticize themselves. There's a little bit of narcissism to it, for sure.
I get that. But this does bring up an interesting point and kind of what I wanted to get into with a lot of this whole topic, which is technical advisors are brought into movies and TV shows.
I'm having a problem over here.
You have a problem?
I saw her face. So.
I'm having an issue with this whole concept because, like, legitimately, I have to say, like, and I don't know about writers, and I will say, like, I feel like writing is a little more romanticized than, like, let's say, real estate. Real estate in entertainment is sort of, it has its weird tropes. or it's incorrectly portrayed in reality TV to be something more glamorous than it is, but I wouldn't really call it romanticized. I think that a lot of times the work is taken out of real estate. Like, they make it look like it's not a job. Like,
that's the romanticization of it.
It is, but it doesn't romanticize the effort of it. And like, whereas writing, I feel like, does at least romanticize like the trials and tribulations of the writing process. And I will say, like, I have respect for writers because like, I don't write well. I wish I did, just for like day-to-day purposes. I spent 3 hours staring at a listing description the other day. Like, can I make it better? Like, and you try really hard because like people read this nonsense that like we read so many. I say nonsense. I read so many of them that I don't even read them anymore. Like, I skim them for details and I'm like, okay, I know basically what it's saying, because most of them are pretty generic. And when you're writing them, like, you sit down, usually for me, it's the night before a listing goes live, you sit down and you try and write something that's genuinely thoughtful and that will stand out from 50 billion other listing descriptions, which really, at the end of the day, like, let's all face it, they're just looking at the pictures. But somebody's going to read it, and it needs to be, and if nothing else, the sellers are going to read it. And you want to make that house sound as good as you can. And every now and then I'll have like a stroke of brilliance. My favorite one was I was selling this fixer-upper that needed a lot of help. And I was like, this house is looking for love. And it's been in all the wrong places.
Oh, the personals ad for a house. I love it.
But it was so cute, and it actually got a lot of attention because it was so like funny and different and just quirky. And like, it was a dumb idea I had in a car, and I was like, I really want to put this. And a friend of mine was like, you should do it. Like,
that never happens in movies, though.
A listing is like you're just trying to write a house, a dating app.
Yeah, but that's a brilliant idea. Like, that would be a great impetus for a movie.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, there is so much work that goes in, and it really is. This is the other big problem I have with how it's portrayed, is what the entertainment industry does not realize is real estate is not just they show it as showing houses, whether it's reality or whether it's entertainment. A very small percentage of my job is walking in and showing pretty houses. Okay. A lot of it is like scheduling inspections and doing contract work and taking legal classes and writing listing descriptions and coordinating with photographers to make sure the photos look great and pulling out stuff. I'm my own marketing team. Most of us legitimately do not have transaction coordinators. There are, like, some of us do. Most of us don't. Most of us are doing everything ourselves. And we're managing our transactions. We're doing all the legal contract work. We're showing the houses. We're scheduling our own appointments. We are literally a full team, and most of us are one person and an assistant if you real lucky and you having a good year.
Right.
If you can sustain an assistant, maybe an assistant. But then you got to pay, that pesky payroll tax and everything. So a lot of times it doesn't wash. So you're doing a lot of it.
Darn you, Social Security.
But a lot of it, you're basically a one-person, maybe two-person team doing 7 different jobs.
Right.
And there is no romanticization of that. There's no, keyboard warrior realtor at night after the day of listing appointments. Like, right. I have to get these all in the MLS. Like, that's another 6 hours of work, guys.
It's interesting because we see this with lawyers a lot in movies and TV shows where they show the back end work and they show how much blood, sweat, and tears there is. But it's a very similar process.
It is. Like, I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't play on the internet. I love law. I love real estate law. I'm fascinated by it. But, like, a lot of the process is the same. There's a lot of background research. There's a lot of contract writing. There's a lot of checking over documentation, making sure everything's in order. That's 90% of the work.
Right.
It's just contracts. And there's a fun 10% that, like, involves people and going to coffee, making people trials. And I'm just like a golden retriever because I get to talk to someone.
Right. You get out of the house and next actually interaction with people. And that's the thing I think about with lawyers, is that it would be a really interesting depiction with real estate, because that's not something you really see a lot. I mean, you see it in horror, like you said, or you see really inaccurate depictions, but you don't really see that young, hungry realtor having to scramble and climb their way up and then something interesting happening with that. And that would be really interesting. Like,
as much as I love $1 million listing, and I really do, like I am a fan, like it's my guilty pleasure. But like as much as I love it, these are realtors that have made it and are selling big homes, and they're out there doing it, and that's what all of us want, most of us at the end of the day. And there's a subsect of realtors that are just happy selling a couple houses now and then, but most of us want that. But those are realtors that have basically like figured it out and gotten it together. Like the first years are not like that.
yeah.
You gotta build your sales funnel. You gotta create leads.
Marketing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of missteps along the way. You gotta find your company culture or whatever, and all that takes time and effort. And like really, the first 3 years are like the grindstone. And then you sort of figure out like, oh, this is what the job is, and then you gotta go become your marketing team, and like that's a big part of like my life right now is figuring out like, where do I want that to go? And that's a whole other job that like when you have like, I'll be real, like there's a point when you get to like 8 or 10 active clients at a time and you're a one-man show that you're like, I ain't got time to do my own marketing right now. But you still have to, most of us still have to do it is the thing. So like it's literally the cycling between all these different hats and trying to find time and energy to do that. And that's why I tell my clients up front, like when I say I'll have you singing by the end of the day, that means midnight, because I come home from appointments and then that's when all my computer stuff gets done. So that's midnight for me.
Right.
But they don't show that cycling of hats, and they don't show like that grinding and that hunger, because there is a lot of that. It's a lot of work.
Right.
And we love it. You have to. You better love it or get out.
Yeah, it is true. Like with writers, you always see them struggling over the page. You show them going through different websites, doing research, which
the
is
typewriter, because
entirely accurate. That is like they go to like the Wikipedia pages and stuff like that to try to get information. It's not the type of research that I like to do, but I do use it. But it's entirely accurate. If it's something that's not entirely important, it's like, okay, I'll just skim over this article right quick and include it in my story,
Right. But this is the thing that writers, and kind of why we're picking apart movies here, is that a little bit of research goes a long way. This is why technical advisors are on movies. My thing is when technical advisors are completely ignored and it's glaringly obvious. Now, one thing that Jeremy and I share is, I think that maybe, Jeremy, it doesn't bother you as much, or maybe you can talk about your personal experience with this, but anything music related in a movie drives me nuts because so often it's gotten so terrifyingly wrong. For me, it gets a little pedantic because being a guitar geek specifically, and this is what my degree is in. This is the thing that I went to college for guitar, and I would love to see a technical advisor be in a movie that would actually help the movies get things right. The most glaring one I can think of is Back to the Future, which is a movie that's great, but when Marty's playing guitar, a Gibson ES-345 that didn't exist until 1958, and he's playing it in 1955, that bothers me. And when Robert Zemeckis hand waves that away and says, "Oh, it's a movie about time travel," like, cool. Was there a scene where he went forward 3 years, bought the guitar, and brought it back? No. Oh, well, then you're a hack, Robert. Because Norman's Rare Guitars was the technical advisor in that movie. And Norman was like, "Do you want a guitar from like the year your movie takes place? Because we have those." And he's like, "No, that one's perfect." And it's like, cool. That didn't exist. So you still want it? Like, yeah, that's the one we want. And another problem with that movie, music wise, is watching Marty play is painful because his miming along with what he's supposed to be doing, especially during the solo, is not the sounds that would be coming out of that amplifier at all. And that's a common and guitars being wrong in the movie, being from the wrong years. Like the Buddy Holly story features a lot of guitars that would have been made after Buddy Holly died, and that's kind of bothersome.
Well, yeah.
The really annoying thing for me, the thing that annoys me the most is I can understand the bad miming if maybe the person didn't practice as much as they could have and should have, like Russell Crowe did for Master and Commander, where he pretty much learned how to play the violin for that movie, and it shows. He's amazing.
Good for him.
Oh yeah. When all the other
Russell
cast
Crowe.
were at like parties and stuff and hanging out, he was practicing violin, so it looked real on camera.
He is a great actor.
And he is a great actor.
Kind of a jerk.
He's fat Australian Santa Claus. It's just the way he is. But the thing that really bothers me is when people in movies talk about guitars. And this happens with cars as well and guns as well and things that I'm passionate about. But I actually went back and watched a couple of scenes for today's episode so that I would get the phrasing right from what they said. We've all seen Wayne's World here, right? We've seen Wayne's World. It's a great movie. Cassandra and Wayne are in the guitar store, and Wayne's about to buy the old Stratocaster with the $5,000 he got. And Cassandra looks at the 1964 Fender Stratocaster, which she correctly identifies the year, which I couldn't glance at most guitars and tell you what year they were made. Maybe a 59 Gibson Les Paul if I was able to hold it. That's about it. She looks at it and says, that's a 64 Fender Stratocaster, and then proceeds to say none of what somebody who knows that would ever say. She says, it's in classic white. Classic white wasn't a Fender color. There was no Fender color called classic white. It was Olympic white. There was Olympic white, but no classic white. That didn't exist, Cassandra. So you immediately know the year. You're so savantish that you know the year when you look at it, and then you're like, it's this color that didn't exist. And then you say, it has 3 single coil pickups and a whammy bar. I'm like, yeah, Cassandra, that's a Stratocaster.
I could see that.
That's what they have. That'd be like me walking up to a car and saying, look, a 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle LS6 454 with 4 wheels and a steering wheel. Yeah, they have those.
I thought you were going to go a little more vague. I thought you were going to be like, 4 rims and a grill.
No, that's the same level of dumbness of what that writer told Tia Carrera to say. And this happens again in the movie.
Checked this.
No, and the things they should, like, the writers are just like reading off a spec sheet. And I know this because in the movie Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg, when he finally gets to go to like the Rockstars, the guitarist of the band Steel Dragon, when he's getting to be in the band, and he sees a 1958 Gibson Flying V. And one of the things he remarks about is, wow, it has a Brazilian, or no, he doesn't say Brazilian, I'm sorry. He says, wow, it has a rosewood fingerboard. And I'm like, that's what they have. They all have that.
Actually, even I know that one, and I'm not a guitarist. I just know that one. I know you.
It's not unique. Like if he could say this and it would be very douchey, but he could say this and it would be more in line with what a guitar geek would say. It was like, hey, that's a 58 Flying V. It has Brazilian rosewood in the fingerboard. And Gibson stopped using that in the mid 60s because it can become too expensive to import. And actually you can't legally buy that now because we over harvested Brazilian rosewood. So you could go into that, and that would be what a guitar geek would do. But to say it has a rosewood fingerboard, yeah, that's what they had. Like, they all had that. That's like saying this Whopper has grill marks. Like, yeah, it's grilled. Like, that's you would never say that.
Those grill marks are probably fake.
They're spray painted on, but don't worry about it.
The interesting thing about that is it's an interesting perspective because you're a guitarist. I'm a drummer. And
right.
Being a drummer, there's not nearly as much media out there because the drummer's always in the background. You're like,
right.
Like occasionally we get a movie like Whiplash out there, which Whiplash isn't entirely accurate, but it's accurate enough for me to forgive a lot of the inaccurate things. And it's like I never went to. And from what I understand, it's like the most inaccurate thing is how the teacher was portrayed. And like, there's no way in heck a teacher could be that abusive and get away with it for that long, and things like that. I never had that experience. So, like, when it comes to the actual drumming portion, it was like I just get to enjoy it because they don't get into like extremely technical things except for the double time swing, which they don't exactly, it's like, accurately portray as they like double time
Well, it's
screening.
not right.
It's presented, it's presented in a way that it's like it's special, and it's like it's like you're saying, like with the it has 3 single coil pickups and a whammy bar. It's like double time
It's a
screening
Stratocaster.
isn't a special thing, you know?
Yeah. And I think music terminology is another thing that's really frustrating. Like, and to use Rockstar as another example, when musicians in the movie don't know musician terms or don't know how to, like, you would know how. Okay, so like at one point in Rockstar, he's trying to get his guitar player in the cover band to play the Steel Dragon song more accurately. He says, "No, more raw." Okay, it sounds like it does in the record. Like, no, it needs to be more raw. And then finally, he does this pinch harmonic. I'm like, oh, you wanted him to do a pinch harmonic. You could have said that instead of your vague, nothing meaning term of more raw. That would be like going up to a chef and being like, no, more delicious. Okay, more salt? No, more salt. More delicious. I don't know what you want from me.
For the record, you're kind of like as a realtor where people are just like, no, I want it like this. And I'm like, that's not a thing.
Like, no, prettier.
Make it better. I don't know what you want.
I don't know what you want me to do. These meaningless terms.
You want to buy the house or not? Like,
you're right. I don't know what you want from me.
But real quick, I have a note on that. So look, okay, understanding that this is entertainment, okay? Like we can all sit here and be as, nerdish as we want to about our weird things. Because I have one, and I'll introduce it when we're done with music. Because I'm not a musician, I barely play the violin. But though I do see, like, I get the feeling a lot of violin scenes are not that well done, actually, even with what little bit that I do understand.
You're correct.
I'm like, that doesn't look like those notes would look. Like, but I will take, I don't know enough to not enjoy most violin movies, not that there are that many. But like, I will take artistic license as a thing that it is. Okay, like, look, I understand you a filmmaker and you came in and you like, I want it to look cool.
Right.
And sometimes the details just don't seem important to you as, Mr. Filmmaker who just wants the scene to look cool.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that we're in a world where people do know about these things, whether they be instruments or cars or guns or my topic that I'm about to bring up. And the thing about it is that when you put a violin in front of a violinist as a movie, and the people who watch these movies about guitars and about musicians are probably interested in the thing, is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And when you
it's very true.
That much technical detail about the thing that they're interested in, and you present them with entertainment that is then inaccurate, and it's not for a legitimate artistic license reason. Like, look, I'll let you alone for a little bit, but
I'll even cut back to the future some slack because the guitar did look cool.
It looked cool, and it wasn't a movie about guitars.
Right.
But when you take a movie about a subject and then you get it wrong, as my topic that I'm about to bring up,
I'm so looking forward to this.
Always does.
You've teased this so much now.
So, but I do, like, my point is here, I'll give you a little bit of room for artistic license and for things look, I'm going to take this in 13-year-old boy terms. It looked cool. Like, I get it. I understand. I used to want to make movies. I wanted everything to look good too. Sometimes looking good does not add up. I'm kind of with you, Paul. Like, I have a thing about weaponry. Not so much guns, just because I'm not that technical about guns, except for a few specific ones, that I happen to know really well. But as far as like, I'm super interested in bladed weaponry and things like that, and bows, and like, you can put some weaponry in front of me, especially in fantasy, and I'll be like, that wouldn't work in real life. And you're trying to present a realistic film.
Right.
And that's not how bows shoot. That
The
has
arrow
got
going perfectly straight as opposed to wobbling, which is what it actually
Yeah.
does.
video games are actually probably far worse about that than
Ooh, yes,
because there's
yes.
some fantastical weapons that would never work. And look, I am willing to suspend my disbelief for some things.
Right, right.
I grew up playing Final Fantasy. Like,
Fair enough. Bust was
You
short.
forget the bus. Yeah, we both.
Jinx.
and some disbelief because it looked cool, but there is
It
a
did.
point, guys. The fun thing is like for trying to figure out how this physics would work. I'm like, could it? No, it can't, but it would be fun. But the topic that I'm going to talk about is my personal, like, I hate to classify guitar as a hobby for you, Paul, because I know it's not. It's like half your life. But I've been an equestrian since I was about 8 years old. I've been horseback riding from like age 8. And okay, let me just say, people need to stop making movies about horses if they can't do any better. So I have this thing that was really, really. I'll get to that in a minute. I have a thing about video games and horseback riding too, but I'll come back to that.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, like recently though, I have noticed Netflix is the big culprit of the moment, because they've actually released some horse movies recently. There's a problem with horse movies, guys. I love horses. I've worked with horses most of my life. I trained horses for money for a little while, like I won't say for a living because it was a very short-lived time in my college years. But I legitimately trained horses. I've competed. I've been on horses since I was 8 years old. I've ridden pretty much every discipline short of polo and being a racehorse jockey. I've pretty much done it. And I've become a very technical rider over the years. I got really into dressage in college. And it's pretty much as technical as you can get about horses. And there's some deep abiding like things about this as a sport and a discipline and a hobby and whatever you want to classify it as, because it is all of the above. To some extent, it is a lifestyle because it will eat your budget. But literally. But the thing about it is, like, I'm going to start with entertainment. This is bad. This has got to stop. Because any movie that has anything to do with horses, except for like Seabiscuit, and
which is a fantastic movie.
It actually is. I will even say, as a horse person, that is a fantastic movie. There's a problem though, because horse movies are so often they're aimed at teenage girls, and this is a mistake for a couple of reasons. It is a very, you want to talk about romanticizing something. It is a very romanticized view, and I've even seen things where like they try and get things about how, like, I particularly use a lot of natural horsemanship in my training. It's a very specific method. They'll try and take elements from it. It is always warped into this cosmic fuzzy, like almost spiritual-esque like bond. Like, guys, this is animal body language, and I'm not trying to like dumb it down to something that's like not. I love horses. I do. I've had some horses that I love very dearly, and they're all special. But like at the end of the day, these are like 3,000-pound animals that can kill you. Like I've ridden a lot of draft. These are 800 to 3,000-pound animals that can kill you, and like you have to remember that when you're a rider. So not only do they like get like this warm, fuzzy, cosmic training idea of like some girl who's never worked around a horse before and doesn't know the back end from the front, and like all of a sudden forms a magical bond with a horse. That's how all these movies go. And then they can't even get like the technical riding aspects correct, because they're so focused on telling like some weird, heartwarming family story.
It's like the horses are just large dogs. Like that's all the movies treat them.
They treat them like they're big dogs, and these are not big dogs. I know people who have bought horses thinking they're big dogs. They're not big dogs, guys. Like, these are prey animals. They will hurt you because they are giant 3-year-olds. They will hurt themselves. I was training for somebody, and I once told them, I'm like, you need to understand, you are dealing with a 1,500-pound 3-year-old that, like, if you can think of a way that your child could hurt yourself on something, that animal will figure it out. Don't leave them unattended. Like, they had a habit of letting their horses graze in a yard, and I was like, don't. One of them happened to be real smart. She liked to like try and climb fences and stuff. Never seen anything like it. This horse was brilliant, like brilliant enough to get itself killed.
Not a good level of smarts to have.
She was a problem child. Like she was real smart. But that's the thing. Like they treat them like they're big dogs. They're not big dogs. And then they can't even get like the technicalness of the discipline right. And this is a problem because it presents a very warped image for people who get into this hobby. Also they always, once again, like everybody leaves out that this stuff is very expensive to do for fun.
Yeah.
You know, I warn my friends that have young children that like actually one of them specifically has a young child that wants a pony really bad right now. And I'm just like, you may want to leave that in the theoretical because it doesn't go away. Sorry, I like
darkness.
Get any better.
My parents are, well, mom and stepdad are in the middle of buying some property out in Milton. And one of the primary reasons they're getting the property is to get a horse for my little sister.
I mean, I love it. I will encourage it all day long. Like, I will be there if they want to invite me over to help. But, like, because I love it. But, like, it is grueling and, like, legitimately dangerous and very expensive to get into. And, like, the unfortunate thing is, like, I mean, I know some people who've gotten it out of their system. Most of us, it doesn't ever go away. It is, when I was training, it was the most gruelingly hard work I've ever done in my life. I would literally get up at 4 a.m, drive 45 minutes, start work before people were awake. And that's like every barn I've ever worked at, because I worked at barns growing up to pay for lessons, because that's what you do when you're a horse girl. You shovel poop to pay the counts on your lesson.
They don't show that in the movies too much.
No, they really don't. They don't show like you being the first one awake and you've like got a cup of coffee that's like probably kind of crappy because it came out of the barn like lounge room. And if you're the first one there, you get to clear out all the spider webs by walking through them. And they come back every day. I don't know why these spider webs are.
The theme tonight apparently is nobody sees anybody suffering for their art, like Sydnee suffering with her light bill apparently. And but
my light's on a timer.
But I mean, this is just like the common thread, at least insofar as our personal examples with our work anyway, and Sydnee with writing and with real estate, Jeremy with your writing and you with radio, is that you just don't see the suffering part of it. You don't see the long hours and the crap.
And like I'm going to take this in a different direction because like obviously we're all really miffed that no one shows the training montage anymore.
Yes.
I love the training montage.
I love the training montage. And
Rocky. That montage is one of the best things.
Why are training montages in entertainment gone? I feel like the work needs to be shown.
Yes, and that's exactly what it is, because we have sold this idea, and I blame Star Wars a little bit for putting this into the popular conscious. The idea of you're kind of automatically good at something. And Luke, you know how long we saw Luke train for? A couple minutes. Minutes. Basically, he just kept getting reminded that he was the chosen one. He was the son of Vader, and he was just going to be. You know, he's like he gets to Return of the Jedi. But he gets to Return of the Jedi, and he's like, "I'm a Jedi now." I'm like, "Cool." You have like 5 minutes of training, and then you have Harry Potter, who's like, "Oh, you're the chosen one." We keep telling people they're the chosen ones. We don't want to see.
You're naturally a special snowflake, and like
at least with Harry Potter, he is the chosen one. But you see him struggle learning. It's like Hermione is always better than him. You know, things like that.
She studies. She works.
He tried. And that's my problem.
Jeremy, your lighting budget.
Sure.
There, I'll join everybody.
Look,
make it all dark.
Full disclosure, the night that we usually do this, my timer is not set to turn the lights off. That is supposed to be my cue to get out of my office when I'm working at night.
Fair enough.
That's amazing.
What about lighting in movies? As long as lighting apparently wants to break in.
Hey, that one episode of Game of Thrones was real dark for a battle. That's all I'm saying. But no, but like, I miss the idea that we have to show that there is work involved.
Yes.
And once again, like going into from a different arena, the same thing with horses and with being a rider all my life. Like I was also taught really poorly in my early childhood because like I just wanted to be around horses and my training was not the best. And so I had to basically relearn as an adult how to ride correctly and fix a lot of bad habits so that I could compete. I had to learn whole new styles. And the thing about it is like when you do dressage, and it's not really something you can explain, unfortunately, to somebody who doesn't do it. The closest I can get to it's the ballet equivalent of horseback riding is that precise. And you say that to people and they think, oh, it's horse dancing. It's not horse dancing. It's just super, super precise movement and control. And the level of technical difficulty and the level of precision that goes into that as a discipline. And it's a great basis. Like I wholeheartedly disagree with people who just put their kids on horses and are like, oh yeah, go take a mediocre riding lesson.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up riding Western. I still like riding Western. I tell everybody, if you're going to teach your kid to ride, put them in dressage first. They will get the classical basis that they need to be good at anything else they want to do. Mm-hmm. They will understand the mechanics of the animal that you are sitting on. They will understand the mechanics their body needs to have and how they work together. And a lot of times when you're riding in general, but specifically I will talk from a dressage standpoint, you're not just trying to learn, you're also trying to teach the horse that you're riding because it's probably somebody's horse that doesn't know what you're supposed to be doing. So the trainer's trying to explain to you on a horse that doesn't know how to teach the horse to do the thing that you want to do, but you don't know what it feels like or looks like. And you're trying to figure all that out. Huh. So you're learning while teaching and you're doing it together. And while, yes, that does create something of like a bond that is very mysticized in entertainment, it's really more of a like technical growth thing. It's like two dancers working together is the closest that I can come. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot that goes into that. And that is never, ever correctly shown, ever. The most you get is like a cute little clip. And the problem with this is I think the reason the sport has lost fans, I did eventing when I competed, which is jumping, dressage, and cross country, which is jumping while running over terrain. It's terrifying and I love it.
Yeah. I do remember like when I was younger, you would actually see like competitions of like jumping and things like that on ESPN and major channels, and you don't see that anymore.
I think while it's one of the reasons it's lost fans is the reason that a lot of like really technical sports today have lost fans is the technical is not being flaunted. And like honestly, if I'm doing something right on a dressage horse, you probably don't see me doing anything. That's the thing. Yeah. That's how subtle it is. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't see me really move very much.
It's like the level of skill needed in baseball. You know, you take this tiny ball and you like just the way you move your hand, you can make the ball curve outward, and the spin on the ball causes it to curve back inward to do a breaking ball. And it's like the skill to be able to see how the ball is spinning in the air as a batter, to be able to judge where that ball is going to go in a matter of a split second, to be able to swing and hit that ball, you know?
And it doesn't look dramatic. And the problem I think right now with things that don't look dramatic, like because dramatic in horseback riding, you're doing something wrong unless you're reining, which is designed to be that way because you're actually doing very little. It just is it's a lot wider movement so people can see things. Most riding, if you're doing something dramatic, something has gone wrong. You should not see gigantic. Well, and that's an art in and of itself, which is completely different. But really, the art of it is, and the technicality of it is, I can do so little and communicate exactly what I want. I should be able to put this animal's feet wherever I want to put them with such little movement that you can't see it.
This reminds me of that psychological principle that we unfortunately all have, is that when we see somebody doing something really super well, we assume it's easy. And I think that when you see something like that, that there is such that incredible technical skill to the point where the movements aren't exaggerated anymore, and it looks small and it looks straightforward and it looks simple, that suddenly people go, oh, well, that's simple. It doesn't take any skill. It should look dramatic, right? Like that's exactly how it should look.
Great,
Why do we do
great,
this?
great example of that is East Coast swing versus West Coast swing.
That's a great example.
Dancing, yeah.
It's like when you had East Coast swing, you had these huge hopping, exaggerated movements. You're doing flips and things like that. There's like at a West Coast competition, you can get disqualified for lifting your partner's feet off the ground.
Mhm.
You know, they're a lot smaller. It's meant to be the ballroom dancer's swing dance. You know?
Right. Precision.
And I think there's something culturally, though, that we've lost about all of these things that we're talking. We're on a weird theme tonight, but all these things we're talking about, I feel like there's something culturally we've lost in precision and skill. And if it's not dramatic and showy, it's not interesting. And that's a shame to me. I want to see the work.
Yeah.
I want to see the work, and I want to see the skill level.
All right. I don't want to. Trust me. I don't want to stop you if you have more to say on horses. But this is a great transition to. We talk about things that the more dramatic it looks, the worse the person's doing at it. I want to talk about cars in movies. Now, aside from the technical problems of the wrong car sounds, and I'm not talking about like, oh, they played a Mercedes 6.9 sound there, but it was actually a 300 SEL 6.3 they showed. I'm talking about like basic things, like they show a Dodge Viper and it's a V8 sound, like that's supposed to sound like a V10. They're incredibly different sounds. I'm not talking about the stuff like windshields shattering, which they don't. It's safety glass. I'm not talking about screeching tires on dirt, which is infuriating and keeps freaking happening. I'm talking about the way that good driving is supposed to be portrayed, which is portrayed very rarely in movies. A close movie to how good driving is supposed to look is Baby Driver, which gets a lot about kind of these escape drivers correct. But fast, good driving looks boring because you're not squealing around turns. You're not fishtailing. You're not drifting. Fast and Furious. The driving in Fast and Furious is horrible driving. It's awful because it's all big exaggerated movements and you're just squealing around turns and the back end's coming out and you're fighting for traction. That's not what good driving looks like. Good driving looks like slow driving in fast motion. That's all it is. That's all it looks like. You watch a good race. That's why people don't. Okay, you want to watch good driving? Watch a Formula One race as an American for more than 10 minutes. It's boring.
That's really hard.
Because they're good. They're good at it. There's not a lot of position change. I mean, if somebody changes position, it's a huge deal in Formula One. People watch NASCAR for the crashes. Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is that, and plus,
know why you're at the party,
Exactly. If you're watching NASCAR, you know why you're watching NASCAR. And if you're watching it because you actually are invested in the race, well, then good for you. Fantastic. Most people watching are not. The really frustrating thing also is when the people in the movies are talking about the cars, kind of like the guitars thing. It's infuriating when like the basic stuff that I can see on screen that they're getting wrong. Aside from what they think driving is supposed to be, which they don't get. And by the way, Fast and Furious, how many reverse gears do you think a car has? When I see a guy driving backwards and I hear him shifting, that's not a thing. But the thing that really gets me also is phraseology in movies. Because here's the thing about it.
It's never noticed that, but you're right.
Yeah. It's true. They did it in the movie Drive. How many reverse gears you got? 3, 4?
Me and Jeremy are just losing it. Look, I can't drive backwards without a backup camera, so.
Yeah, but apparently they had a really unique transmission installed.
I'm never going to look at driving.
It's
The
Mater.
movie's the same
I'm the
now.
world's best backwards driver. I have multiple gears.
It's something I knew, but never thought about until just now.
Yeah, it doesn't because it's only later on somebody points it out and you're like, wait, no, they didn't do that. We've all driven cars.
I am going to watch for that now.
Wait. Because once again, I'm gonna pause you for just a second.
All right.
I understand. I used to be an action movie nut. I get that they want it to look exciting. I really do. I understand, Mr. Filmmaker, that you want it to look interesting. And driving is one of those things that I have often, I'll suspend my disbelief, okay? It's the Buster Sword of action movies. I get it. You're going to spin around a turn. And the back end's going to look like this, which realistically, if your car is doing that, you're about to roll, and it's not.
It's a problem.
Look, I fishtailed my car, recently. Not very badly, but somebody pulled out of me in front of me on the interstate. And, I had to stop really quickly. And as soon as your car starts fishtailing, you're like,
I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. That's what's gonna happen now.
Die or nope, we're okay.
You're not yeah.
The adrenaline rush is real. The adrenaline rush is real when things like that happen for a reason.
Yes.
Because you're out of control of the vehicle. And apart from a controlled drift, which can be done to my knowledge.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
You can drift a car and be in control of it, and that takes some skill because you're kind of also out of control of the vehicle.
Well,
but
even the really good people do crash doing that.
You do, because you let the vehicle go out of the range of control for a moment.
Yeah.
And okay, but I get that driving has to look interesting for action movies.
Right.
However, I'm with you on the multiple gears in reverse.
Multiple gears in reverse. It doesn't make any sense. And the thing is that they're in movies. It's like the musicians. It's like anything where the people in the movie are supposed to be experts. They're supposed to know the thing. I lost a few brain cells in research for tonight because I had to go back and watch some of Transformers, because I remember in the theater being so incensed by this.
Nope, I'm out.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
You bring up Transformers and I walk.
I have seen the first one and I saw it in the theater, and I have never watched it again, and I never saw any of the subsequent ones because they're just I tried watching the fourth one for a few minutes. It's Mark Wahlberg. Let me see what. No, just I got 2 minutes in, I couldn't do it.
No.
It's interesting that Michael Bay used to make good movies.
I know what happened. The Rock and The Island. I love them.
Yeah.
I know, but
and he found Transformers.
And they did Transformers, and then it's all downhill from there. But there's a scene in the movie where Shia LaBeouf's character picks up Megan Fox in Bumblebee, in this movie, a Camaro. In the original cartoon series, he was a Volkswagen Beetle, and I was kind of looking forward to him being a Volkswagen Beetle, but they said, no, this is how we're going to debut the new Camaro. So he turns into a 1971 Camaro and then a 2009 Camaro.
I love a Volkswagen. That's sad. No,
I know. They even the scene where he goes and picks out Bumblebee, he gets into the Camaro, and next to it is a Volkswagen. But he's taking Megan Fox, whose ocular nerves are not connected to her brain, and so her eyes just kind of wander around like a chameleon, and she's just not smart in this movie. And I don't know Megan Fox, and I don't care, but this character that she's written as, at one point, she pops the hood to Bumblebee, and she says, "Got a high-rise double-pump carburetor," which they had just shown the engine, and it has mechanical fuel injection with 8 individual throttle bodies. So no, it does not.
Carburetor.
It does not have and first off, you don't have a high-rise carburetor. You have a high-rise intake with a carburetor on top of it. You wouldn't say it has a high-rise double pump carburetor. And nobody refers to them as double pump carburetors. They're double pumpers. That's the colloquial term that we all use for double pump carburetors, because nobody says double pump carburetor because that's stupid. And then Shia LaBeouf's character asks her, what does that mean? And she says, and I quote, "It squirts the fuel in so you can go faster." No, it freaking does not. Saying that phrase,
maybe the worst line.
I mean, it is. It's horrible.
That's
Okay.
bad.
So, yes, the carburetor does squirt fuel
Actually,
in the car and it will go faster. But saying that it squirts the fuel in so you can go faster is like saying that guy ate food so he can run faster.
If you don't have fuel in there,
There's a lot of technical details you're missing here.
it'll
What
make
it
your car
does,
go faster if you're not pushing it. Yeah.
right? Yeah. What a double pumper does is it's mechanical secondaries on the carburetor that will open up and then allow more fuel than a carburetor with vacuum secondaries. So what she could have said was it squirts in more fuel than a regular carburetor, so it goes faster. That would have been at least more accurate, but still dumb to say. And it's just like it's the basic, like, you just showed me the engine. Like, you literally said, there's the engine. Here's a thing it's not. It's like, it'd be like if I walked in with a pizza and said, enjoy your sandwich. It just doesn't freaking make sense. And in the Fast and the Furious, when they get the Toyota Supra delivered, beginning of the movie, and Paul Walker, Vin Diesel, and the guy whose name is something I don't care because he was never in any other movies that matter, and they look under the hood of this early 90s Toyota Supra, and Mark said, "Oh man, it's got a 2JZ engine in here." I'm like, yeah, that's what they had. That's what the engine was in those cars. That's like opening the hood and saying, hey, here's the thing it came with. Yeah.
it's a stock part.
It's a stock part. That's what they all freaking had. And they were in a lot of other Toyota products too. A lot of Lexus products. They're not that unique. You can go to a junkyard now and find one if you want to. There are a lot of, especially in the early 2000s.
Okay, PSA to movie producers. Only point it out if it's something that shouldn't already exist in the version that you went to the store and got.
And you have to come up with a reason why someone would say the thing. They are good special engines, but what you could say is, hey, look, it still has its engine. I wouldn't have thought it did, and given the condition that this car is in. That's good because it's a 2JZ and we can add a lot of horsepower to it. That's a thing that the character could say. Not, wow, here's the thing it came with.
Yeah, what's so great is you're trying to establish the character as a type of expert, and then they immediately reveal themselves as not an expert because of how excited they are to see a stock part on something.
Here's how you fix it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sydnee.
No, I was going to say, like, back to what we were saying earlier, like, while I will suspend disbelief for, like, driving looking interesting.
Yes, absolutely.
I can't suspend disbelief when I know you have fact checkers. And if I know a thing about horses, or if I know a thing about guitars, or whatever, and you say something that's blatantly incorrect, or something like that, where you're just like, yeah, but like every, Stradivarius violin had that fingerboard.
Right.
It's the interesting thing is it's like being able to watch a fantasy movie and I believe in this unicorn over here because it fits within this world. I believe in this drifting is making my driving more efficient because it fits in this world. But, when you have somebody who's supposed to be an expert at something blatantly not being an expert at something, you can't dispel that.
Go back and reestablish that character.
Yeah.
And
now, here's
once again, if we're watching movies like this, odds are I'm at least a little interested in the topic.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
See, here's how you fix this, movie producers. If I can see the information on an advertisement or a spec sheet, it doesn't need to be mentioned out loud. I know that stuff already. Okay? And especially if I'm talking to somebody else who is knowledgeable, they probably know it as well. I don't need the here's the thing. What they're trying to do is they're trying to create a guy number 2 without there being a guy number 2 in the room.
Mm-hmm.
What you need is if you're going to have somebody explaining something like this, have a guy number 2 in the room. Oh man, it's still got the 2JZ in there. What's that? The 2JZ. Oh man, these engines, they were just the strongest engines that Toyota ever made. They could take a lot of horsepower. Then you can have that explanation. When you have a bunch of knowledgeable people talking to each other, they don't talk like that.
They don't talk like that. Two things happen, okay? And I know this from years being around horse people. The terminology either gets so technical that nobody else understands what we're talking about at all. Lay people would have no. If I'm discussing a horse that I'm going to buy with somebody else who knows horses, I'm not saying terminology that you would recognize.
No,
it's
and I wouldn't expect you to.
interesting to you because you're like, I've got no idea what you're talking about. You
Right.
You started discussing X-rays and like,
right.
You know,
you gotta dumb it down. You know,
you do, and so that's not an interesting conversation to show at all.
Well, you could if you did it in a funny way. Because you could have subtitles that would be like dumbing it down for English translation or something. Like that would be funny.
I got to tinker with your ticker.
Yes, yeah, exactly. You got to tinker with your ticker. Because that's the thing about it is, if you want to portray somebody as being an expert, you have to figure out a way of doing it so that the experts and the lay people are both satisfied.
Well, either you have to explain it to someone on screen.
Yep.
Or once again, like if I'm talking technical, it's only going to be interesting to the people who are technical about that subject.
Right.
So you have to have somebody there to explain it, or give a good reason that you would talk about it in such layman terms.
So that reminds me of the other topic I was going to bring up. I'm going to be really short about this one. Although with cars, one more thing. If your car person in your movie refers to it as a Porsche or a Beamer, they're not car people. But with guns, you talk about having a reason to explain something. I think the worst example of that I can think of is in Die Hard 2, when John McClane is yelling at Dennis Franz, the security person who's in charge of the Dulles airport in the movie. And he says, because there are these terrorists there in the airport, and one guy got through a metal detector and started shooting at the cops.
Oh, I know what thing you're talking about.
Oh, yes. And he says to Dennis Franz, it's a Glock 7. It's a porcelain gun that's worth more than you make in a month.
Yeah, okay,
and
I know what you're talking about.
Glock 17 is the name of the gun. There's no porcelain in it, and they don't go through metal detectors, like you said. Actually, even the plastic parts that are in a Glock are still radio opaque because they have metal embedded in them for strength. And they cost like $500 now in today's money. It's like, I mean, there are people who could buy that with a day's salary. Like, what the money I made today, I'm going to go buy a Glock. You could do that. There's like every part. How does somebody get so much wrong and say it with such confidence and have such a reason to say those things?
And another thing, okay, so I have a big problem with misinformation, apparently.
Yes.
No, I do, especially about topics that are, okay, so guns are one of those things. You have your gun nerds, and we are nerds, like those of us who know guns really well. I'm not one of them, but I know people who are. You have your gun nerds, and then you have people who know nothing about it and don't know how to, like, even where to start. Either for reasons that, like, they're not comfortable with them or whatever. All kinds. But, like, so the thing is, my problem with this kind of misinformation is that it takes something that's already kind of scary to people and that people already don't know about real well unless you're just in that culture. I grew up in a family that hunts. I've been around firearms my entire life. They don't scare me. But I've been around people who are afraid of guns. And the thing is, when you spread this kind of misinformation, especially regarding things like security and metal detectors.
Oh gosh, that's yeah.
That's a really bad idea, Mr. Movie Maker. Like, why are you doing, like, all that does is create misinformation and fear. and makes us kind of like, oh, what they're doing.
Yeah,
It
the people who know are just like, no, that's not how
That's not
that
how that
works.
works. Not how any of that
Mhm.
works. You
Like,
know?
okay, like fully automatic firearms. Okay, um, I've shot a fully automatic firearm. I did not hit what I was aiming at. That's what life is with a fully automatic firearm. And in the movies, they're just like shown as like these hoses of death, where like you just spray it into a crowd and it kills people. It's really hard to hit what you're aiming at with a fully automatic firearm. Not only that, but the average magazine is like 30 rounds, and it goes like
They were not real quick.
it's gone. It's like, it's empty. It's not just like this empty, endless. And plus, you know what happens when machine guns fire for a really long time? They melt.
They get
There's a lot
really,
of
really hot.
Yes, exactly. They get hot. You have to clean guns. They're a mechanical thing that exists with the laws of nature, like everything else. They're not magical. And stop racking your slides. You're ejecting perfectly good shells. It's not making you seem cooler by going with your shotgun. There's a shell on the ground now that was in the gun.
Flew past your face.
Yeah, it's like
Perfectly good round.
forgot. Yeah. That's the thing. Even John Wick was guilty of.
And he was. Here's the worst. Here's the worst gun thing, I think. Beyond the fact that silencers don't actually silence guns.
They're loud as heck. So you're not going to shoot one inside. You're going to shoot one inside the house in an apartment. People are still going to hear it.
Oh, yeah. It takes 130 decibel sound down to 105 decibel sound. That's still pretty loud.
It won't blow your eardrums, but everybody still knows what you did.
Exactly. Nobody's concealed carrying a Desert Eagle. That's a 5-pound gun. Some guy just pulling it out of his waistcoat. Okay. He'd be walking around like this all day.
And Wyatt Earp, maybe.
Exactly. Guns don't fire when they're dropped. There have been like a couple in history, and they were poorly designed. You can't silence a revolver. There's been one in the history of the planet that has been silenceable. And the worst of them all, the worst one is guns are loud. Okay? The movie The Other Guys is the only movie I've ever seen that references this. Like, oh my gosh, why that gunfire was so loud. Every movie you see, people are just firing shotguns.
Air protection is a thing for a reason.
Yeah. The movie Heat actually did a good job of that, where they showed the bank, not the bank tellers, the armored car drivers, their ears were bleeding from the sound. But like you watch Black Hawk Down, and like there's a dude just standing next to
firing going on everywhere, and
a assault machine gun just firing, and they're just standing next to it, like,
you will blow your eardrums. That's the real thing.
You will go deaf.
What I love about that is they love doing the like grenade explosion, and it's like the high pitched whine. The tinnitus comes in
for a minute.
Yeah. It's like, guns do that too.
Guns do that really bad.
Any loud boom, guys. Any loud boom will F up your ears.
That's why you see people
bit.
at shooting ranges wearing like muffs and earplugs, and why cops have earplugs. Another one that bothers me a little bit was aiming, the sideways, like holding it like that, like, okay, cool, just like the automatic gun. You're not gonna
You
miss.
can do it. It takes a lot more work. Like
yeah, it's not really great. And kind of getting along with the just being automatically good at stuff. Hitting what you're aiming at with a gun is hard. It's hard to do. Not only
in high stress environments.
Yes, exactly.
Where bombs are apparently going off around you on a city street.
But they just show and look, I love the Western 310 to Yuma, but apparently they didn't tell the actors that guns have recoil, because every single actor is just like bang, and I'm like, it's supposed to do that. But every single person in that movie, even people who have been in movies firing guns, every single one, like, bang. They're like,
we need you to look really stoic and cool.
It's just not how any of this works at all.
And my problem with it on topics like that, once again, are topics that are obviously sensitive and obviously scare some people. And I don't think that spreading misinformation about topics that scare people is a good idea.
No. The thing is, I think that here's the thing. I think it's a right and good thing to make guns seem scary because they are. I own guns. They are terrifying things. They're meant to kill people. The first thing you learn when you get a gun is don't point it at something you don't want to die. But we don't emphasize the right scariness about guns in media. And then misinformation stuff just buries it all. When I see the next time I see in a movie where the gun fires the whole bullet, like the casing and all, that's not how it works. Like, I
It's
don't
like,
know if
what
it
are
was,
you ejecting from the gun? I just saw the casing fly
I
out.
know the
It was
casing
only the
fly out.
bullet.
But then it's
But it was still.
it reminds me of the Portal 2 ad where it was, and our turrets fire the whole bullet. That's 60% more bullet per bullet.
Yeah, I love that so much.
It's just
I
like
love all of them so
all
much.
of Portal 2.
But yeah, that's how. Actually, I forgot about that one. That was great.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it was Get Smart I was watching, and it was they were firing like these pellet rounds. They were supposed to be like, almost like a paintballs in the shells, and they show the bullet flying in slow motion with the case on it. No, that's not how that works at all.
Every time I see that, I just imagine. I don't know where I saw this. I saw a video like advertising for how to teach you to make TikTok videos the other day. Don't ask. It was like an ad on Facebook or some nonsense. And like it's showing the guy like throwing a ping pong ball and it's landing in a cup every single time. And
Right.
the camera set up right in front of the cup. And then they back off and it's the guy throwing a ping pong ball over his friend's head and the friend is dropping the ping pong ball.
Nice.
And that's what I imagine now every time I see like a shootout scene in a movie where they do
Yes.
the thing. And here's the thing. So like crappy movies that I love. Crappy movies that I genuinely love, like Van Helsing.
Right.
Wanted is one of those movies.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely love this movie.
Yeah.
Terrible.
It's a dumb movie.
Dumb movie. I genuinely love it. I don't care. And the soundtrack was awesome.
Right. Right.
Danny Elfman did a great job. But I would almost prefer that. If we're going to see fantastical stuff done with firearms, I want to see like suspend my disbelief that you can curve a bullet. Like
make it as over
and
the
they
top.
do a
You
good
can go
job.
bang, and it can curve the bullet around somebody's head.
That's the thing, though. They do a good job of making you suspend your disbelief because while geometrically we know that they only fire straight, like
yeah, it's ejected too quickly for any force we're applying to the gun to be able to actually curve it. But they take the idea of how to throw a curveball in baseball
and
apply it to a gun. It's like it's the same exact concept.
It's just
so
good.
We have you to be able to suspend your disbelief because we know we can do it with baseballs. Why not a bullet?
Right.
And I love it. And I love that they take him from in the beginning being like, no, it can't be done. That's stupid. Because it suspends your disbelief along with the characters. And it's
right.
This is why I love this movie. It's perfection. Brilliant.
Well, and you get to see a Chris Pratt get hit in the face with a keyboard, so there's that.
But there is
oh
an
my
art.
gosh, I forgot that he was in that movie.
That's the other movie, dude. But there is an art to suspending disbelief that I think that filmmaking has forgotten about. And that's why I love this movie. It's not like it's a dorky movie, but I love it. But they did such a good job. And I would rather see that.
I have a thing that I tend to get really annoyed at in movies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's particularly in books and media in general. I see dystopian films like this. This ties back into the whole idea of like being able to suspend my disbelief. Dystopian films are post-apocalyptic films and things like that. Like we have the society, and these societies essentially, if you look at it, it's always in the perspective of our society.
Yes.
I can't suspend my disbelief because like we live in opulent times. Look at us. We're talking to each other through phones right now. We have food. We don't have to worry about food. We don't have to worry about
So
so many little details in life. But when you look at most dystopian films, like take the Hunger Games for example, this is a huge culprit of this. Is that they have all these extraneous thoughts beyond the survival that apparently they're struggling to receive. It's like, okay, it's like you're actually thinking about revolution. You have groups thinking about revolution and building up a revolution in a time when you can't eat. Like, you just
you have
look
to
at
have
the country. You have to look at all the nations of the world. You have to look at all of history. Not one, not one revolution has ever been fought in a nation like North Korea, where a populace is so repressed that all they can focus on is the primary needs of life.
you have to have your
Like,
hierarchy of needs met first.
yeah, exactly. You have to be able to get to the intellectual level of being able to think about what freedom is and why we have a right to it. It's like, look at China. Where is the problem child in China? It's Hong Kong. Hong Kong has been a free state for a long time. It was under British rule for over 50 years. It wasn't until the 1990s where it was given back to China. And what do we have going on now? That they're trying to take away that, so you're starting to see pushback. But if there's a people who never had it in the first place, then they won't be able to know to actually get it. They don't know what it is. It's not something that's bred into us. It's something that we have to learn. And if we don't learn it, we're not going to get it. It's like being able to see like how a society descends into that. It's like that's another thing that's completely inaccurate in movies. How you describe, like, just people don't just give their freedoms away. It's like even in times like these, like you see people out in the streets protesting because they have to wear a mask, and it's like people don't like being told what to do once they've been at a point where they're told they
It's
don't
very hard
have
to go in
do
reverse.
this.
It's very, very
It's
difficult.
extremely hard to go in reverse. It takes generations of people to be able to pull freedom after freedom away, because you have to erase the memory of that freedom to be able to remove it. There is an instinct, because like this is another thing that you don't really see. You always have evil guy, evil dystopian government people, and the good guys.
The good
You
rebellion.
don't, yeah, the good rebellion. We like to watch the good rebellion, but that's hardly ever realistic. If you look throughout history, revolution has always been about deposing what's already there. And when you just depose something that's already there, the people who are most likely to take over that are the most extreme elements, because they're the only ones organized enough to actually do something about that. Mm-hmm. This is something that, like, if you watch every revolution in history, that's like French Revolution is a great example of that. Like,
yeah.
Who took over from the French Revolution? It was the Jacobins. The Jacobins created a commune within Paris, and they claim, hey, it's these rich landowners who were actually destitute at that time, because they didn't have an idea of what the real world was actually like in France. But they blamed the rich landowners who were poor and like couldn't even feed their serfs. Their serfs were starving. And it's like, because they had centralized all the wealth within Paris, and they started beheading people left and right and said everybody is equal, and like, but that collapsed quickly and was replaced with it's like just seeing the details of revolution. Like the American Revolution is a very different revolution in regards that if you look at it, it wasn't to tear something down, it was to re-establish something.
Mhm.
So if you want to do this model of bad government versus good revolution, is you do have to have like the factionist parts of this and seeing the argument fold of creating something that's taking what's there and recreating what they want to actually live as. So like, because the world is way too vague and power vacuums occur, and because of like, it's very hard for me to watch movies like that because it never follows a realistic pattern.
Okay, so Return of the Jedi, if you want to talk about power vacuum,
Yeah.
the Space Emperor was just murdered by the most powerful wizard that has ever existed in Darth Vader, who now was just himself killed, and everybody's happy, right? Coruscant, not going to be a problem there. Oh, what happens? Oh, First Order. That's right. And the subsequent trilogy, of course, because everything has to fill that power vacuum. You know?
Which is like, there's probably my favorite example. I think the most realistic example of a dystopian story out there, and of somebody wanting to start a revolution, things like that. And I'm so glad this is like the preeminent dystopian story ever told. 1984. 1984. Look at each element. Okay, who is it that starts to rebel? It is the guy who is on the upper end. He is living the good life, and he has his mind open to see, like, oh my gosh, they're watching everything I do. I have no autonomy in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And he begins to feel the pressure of oppression. He notices it because he is at the level where he's able to notice these things.
Right. He has the power to do something about it.
Yeah. So he goes into this thinking, okay, I'm going to inspire everyone in like the lower class and things like that into acting. But come to find out, he's like, it's all up to the proles. It's all up to the proles, short for proletariat. The proletariat's going to rise up and take down this awful government. The proletariat is just living their life.
Yeah.
Day to day, just doing normal things. They have that heavy hand that he feels, they're not aware of its existence at all. So,
well, movies can only focus on so much and really shine a light on one thing at a time because that's what the human brain can process. But the problem is that movies also movies get to say the end. Life doesn't get to say the end. Life continues going and circling and cycling and keeps processing and pushing on. At the end of a movie, when they voted, yay, the thing is done, the end. Well, what happens after that? Like, what are all the ramifications of that thing that just got voted in? What's going to happen now?
Mr. Smith goes to Washington.
Yeah. But people see that the end and they're like, oh, cool, that's it. That's why I'm actually kind of glad about the sequel culture that we have going on now and why things don't really ever end, because that's actually more realistic. In a Terminator, like, oh, the Judgment Day didn't come. We got more robots coming. Oh, no, there are more robots coming. That's how it would be. Like, there'd just be an endless cycle of robots.
We gotta take down Skynet, and then even that didn't work. Like,
even that didn't work. It would just, that's exactly how, because that's just like, in real life, we're just like, oh, crap, there were untold ramifications from the thing we just did. We gotta deal with these now. Yeah. That's what the sequel always is. And life is just a series of sequels, apparently.
Wow, Paul.
Wow, this episode got bleak.
It's,
What the
Yeah,
hell? We were talking about
it's
guitar
argument
fingerboards.
usually the
it's just a thing that like I've spent so many hours just reading book after book
Right.
after book after news article after news article about like it's a whole subject that I'm fascinated with. So like when I see stories trying to portray certain
Right.
ideas, it's like no, that's not how it would have played out.
Sorry, I'm just looking at like the notes from the beginning of the episode. Like they got the color of this guitar wrong, and now it's like, what happens when millions of people get murdered and nobody does anything about it? This just
We're
I love that I'm over here making the argument for Game of Thrones and Star Wars where like, most of the general population is just like, oh, they're doing that thing again. I'm just trying to make a living and not
Right.
die. Like,
which actually is how the average person was in Nazi Germany. They were just trying to. Wow. Okay, so this episode, we probably should just cut it off here.
really should.
we're sorry.
Every discussion once it hits Nazis is pretty much it's at the end. So no winners this week. We're not even doing that. It's just we had a thing where we talked about stuff in movies that bothered us and then got into what's wrong with the planet. So it's been good. It's been fun. And it's been terrifying. This has been the Casual Fanatics. I am Paul Stadden. That's Jeremy Brazel. That's Sydnee Johnson. Until next time, look for things in movies that bother you and try to fix what's going on with the geopolitical situation for the last 4,000 years. Nothing in between those two things. Bye.
We're sorry.
we, no credits, just an apology.